The baby from the previous movie begins to grow at a rapid rate, very just growing like crazy. And you're like, oh, okay. Her name's Renesmee, by the way. And she's part CGI. Welcome to our channel. Okay. Okay, that's not happening. Hi, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not, welcome back. I have watched 8 different TV shows and movies, vampire TV shows and movies. I should have said that. I mean, can you tell with my whole vampire getup we have going on here? But I've watched 8 vampire TV shows and movies in the last couple weeks, and I'm gonna rank them all because I love vampire media. I love vampire books, TV, movie, anything vampire related. I'm a fan. My family's tired of hearing me talk about it, so I need to talk about it with someone, and unfortunately for you, that someone's gonna be you, okay? So buckle up, grab a snack. It's gonna be a long one. I got a little get up going on. Also, I took your feedback in the comments of having terrible lighting, and for Christmas, I bought myself a ring light. So if my eyes look like they're staring into the fiery depths, okay, it's because I'm staring at a ring light behind the camera. If it's still a problem, don't tell me about it. I don't want to know. I'm going to rank each TV show and movie by vampire. This is based off of like powers, okay, weaknesses, overall aesthetic, and then number 1 hottie, best couple, best character, worst character, and then the overall Fang rating out of 5, okay? This is how I will be ranking each show and movie. We have a couple movies in here as well. I'm sitting on my cape. Okay. For the first show that I watched The Vampire Diaries, okay? This used to be my favorite show, or like vampire show, until I watched a couple of the shows in this video, but it's also where I started. It's my roots of vampire media. I watched this when I was a teenager, and it's just so nostalgic for me, so it's gonna get some points just based off nostalgia. This show premiered in 2009 and ended in 2017. So from the time I was 8 to 16 years old. I just like to add my age in there because for people watching who don't understand how old I am, some of you guys think I'm 14, some of you guys think I'm 12. So I was 8 when it came out and 16 when it ended, and there are 8 seasons total. This show is set in a fictional town that doesn't exist called Mystic Falls in Virginia, and it's supposed to have like a supernatural history to the town, which is why like there's every supernatural being ends up in this town. But we follow the life of Elena Gilbert, who's a teenager who just lost both of her parents in a car crash, RIP. She falls in love with Stefan, he's like 161, he's a vampire, and then his big bad brother Damon comes into town, who's also a vampire. He's older than him, and it's kind of like a love triangle between Elena and Stefan and Damon. And yes, if you're gonna ask me what team I'm on, I'm team Damon, obviously, because who in the world is team Stefan? If you are, I'm not arguing with that. Okay, it's team Damon, okay? It also follows other things like she has a brother named Jeremy, her best friend Bonnie is a witch, her other best friend Caroline ends up being a vampire pretty soon. That's not really a spoiler. She ends up being a vampire, I'm pretty sure, in like season 1. So, but there's also werewolves, there's Matt Donovan, who's the human and forever annoying. It starts with them in high school, follows them to college, into their careers. I hate the later seasons, so in my mind, it's just in high school because once they get to college, I'm kind of over it. So there are 8 seasons. The first season is when Elena meets Stefan. They fall in love. Damon comes to town. There's a whole little love triangle going on. Elena finds an old picture of Catherine, which is Stefan's ex-girlfriend, who looks exactly like her. She has a little flip out moment. It's a fun honestly, it's the funnest. It's the season I like the most. Season 2. The season 2's focus is on breaking the sun and moon curse, which is like werewolves want to break it first because if werewolves break it, then they're not bound by the moon. They won't turn every full moon, and turning is really painful. And if vampires break it, then they're not bound by the sun. So if they break it, they can come out in the daytime. But the kicker is the whole sun and moon curse is a complete lie. It's not an actual curse. The actual curse is set on one of the original vampires, Klaus, who is a hybrid, but his werewolf side has been dormant unless they can break the curse. So it's a boring, honestly, I mean, season 1 and 2 are my favorites, but that's kind of the idea of season 2. Season 3 is all about hybrids. Klaus ends up breaking the curse. He finds out Elena is the key to making more hybrids, so it's just a lot of like, Elena's being stolen, Elena's being kidnapped, Elena's being saved, hybrids are being made, hybrids are being killed. That's kind of the whole season. Season 4 is when Elena becomes a vampire. Personally, I think that was a stupid idea. I don't like her as a vampire. I think she's annoying, but it's like we kind of needed her to become a vampire in order for her to get with Damon. But also, I think they ruined their romance with the damn sire plot line, like that she sired to him, and they're like, we don't know if she really likes him because there's the sire bond. Like, did you really have to do this? I didn't like that whole thing. Season 5, time to go to college. I hate the college times. Okay, we're skipping. Season 6 is where Damon and Bonnie get trapped in like the alternate world where they have to like live in the same day and they can like never leave, which sucks. But it kind of reminds me of Riverdale. That season reminds me of Riverdale. I'm like, what is going on? Like, it's almost like anything can happen, so there's like no stakes. And this is where they start losing me, okay? Season 7, the Heretics, which are like a group of witch vampires, vampire witch hybrids that are led by Damon and Stefan's mom. I'm like, girl, I think we should leave dead people dead. My eye is twitching. Did you? I don't know if you saw that. I felt it. Season 8. Season 8 sucked. I hated the ending of the show. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but honestly, if I were you, stop watching after like season 4. Coolest part about the show is watching Nina Dobrev play Elena and her doppelganger Catherine and the other doppelganger from the very beginning. But watching her like switch from role to role, from evil to good, from old to new, from modern, like she has range. And I know people hate her because she cries a lot, but like you would cry too. If everything that happened to Elena happened to you, you would be crying too. So I am pro Elena crying. So if you hate her, get off this video, go somewhere else. Now let's talk specifically about the vampires before we get into the overall rating. The vampires, okay? They have super speed. They can compel people like mind control, but only if they haven't ingested or they're not wearing vervain, which is like an herb. So kind of like a weakness. Also, the herb vervain burns them as well. So, weakness. They can die from a stake to the heart, wooden bullet to the heart, getting their heart ripped out, getting decapitated. Pretty normal. I would say their deaths are a little boring. They kind of just like go gray and shrivel and like their little like veins turn gray. Kind of cool, but whatever. They also do burn up in the sun, but this show has a stupid little loophole where there's sun rings, like what they call daylight rings, where if you're a vampire wearing a daylight ring, you can go into the sun. So that's how they get around Damon and Stefan basically being able to be in any scene at any time, even though they're vampires. They have special rings that allow them to. I think it's a stupid cop-out. I think if True Blood can do it, then they should be able to do it, but whatever. The makeup and the effects of these vampires are really good. I love the way the vampires look in this show, so they're gonna get points for that. I might be a little biased because when I was like 13, I was obsessed with this show. I just love the veiny look of the eyes when they're like going all vampire. I love it. I think the special effects are just like just right and not overboard. I do think the earlier seasons were cooler just because of the early 2000s vibes, but it's fine. There is a spin-off series called The Originals where it follows the original family, the original vampire family. I tried to watch that show. I started it. I got like a couple episodes in, but I hate like 80% of the cast over there. I don't like Marcel. I don't like the psychologist girl. I forgot her name, but it's the girl that Klaus ends up with or getting pregnant or something. Now, I didn't like any of them. The only people I liked were Klaus and Elijah, and they're like barely part. That's mostly the other people. So I didn't end up watching it, but so it's not gonna be in this rating, but there is that spin-off show. All right, so overall ranking of this show. As far as the vampires, the powers go, I would say they're all right. I think they lose major points for the stupid daylight rings. I think they're dumb. Number one hottie's obviously gonna be Damon and Salvatore. Best couple is Bonnie and Enzo, hands down. Best character, Bonnie. Worst character, Matt. Okay, I think you'll all agree with me on that. Overall Fang rating, 3 out of 5 Fangs. It pains me, but I really only like the first couple seasons, so 3 out of 5 Fangs. On to the next. Twilight movies. The Twilight Saga. Okay, I did read the books when I was a teenager. I haven't reread them recently, but it is something I want to do as like a fully developed, not fully developed, let's be honest, kind of developed brain. I want to reread them, but based off the movies are based off the book series by Stephanie Meyer. The series ended up grossing $3.3 billion worldwide. I have a couple fun facts here for you. The first movie came out in 2008. The last one came out in 2012. So I was 7 and then 11. So I was very, very young. I got into this like after its peak because I was a child. But I did get to see the last two, Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2 in theaters, but the other ones I didn't because I was too young. But there are 5 movies: Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn Part 1, Breaking Dawn Part 2. Okay, so Twilight follows 17-year-old Bella Swan, also played by Kristen Stewart, the love of my life. She leaves Phoenix, Arizona, and goes to move to Forks, a small town in Washington, to live with her father, who's also the sheriff, or the police chief. I'm sorry, I don't really know the difference. I care to know the difference. She gets reaccounted with Jacob Black, which is her friend who lives on a reservation. He's also part of a werewolf bloodline, but that doesn't really come into play until like the later movies. So the first movie is mostly just about her and Edward, and you get a little bit of Jacob action, but no werewolves yet. Bella's the new girl at school, ends up getting sat next to Edward, and then we get the infamous meet cute. That's really not cute because she looks repulsed by him the whole time, or he looks repulsed by her the whole time. He's like, like it's so. Also doing this in this costume is so much funnier, but he's literally like next to her and he's like this. He's like, oh, literally, and she's over here like, do I smell? Like, why is he acting literally repulsed by me? I haven't even said anything to him. That's how they meet. So, love at first sight. Anyways, the movie follows Bella falling in love with Edward. They date, they meet his family. It's a whole thing. But the first one's mostly about them getting together, and then James, this evil vampire, shows up, crashes their baseball game, and then he wants to eat her. He has to eat her because she smells so good. And it ends with them having to battle him, and it ends with kind of like, it's so dangerous for us to be together. And she's like, but you can't leave me because I'm like really, really attached to you. And then he's like, okay, I won't. And then the second movie, New Moon, my personal favorite. If you were to ask me at 13, 14, I would say my favorite was Eclipse, but that's only because of the tent scene. And if you know, you know, but that was my favorite for that. Now, as a grown adult woman, I would say New Moon is my favorite. But Bella has her birthday party, she cuts her finger, she gets flung across the room, lands on a glass table, the glass table shatters, making everything 10 times worse. Thank you, Edward. This is his like aha moment where he's like, oh, I'm a vampire, you're a human, and one of these days you're gonna die because I'm a vampire and you're a human. We have to break up. His way of breaking up with her was to walk her into the woods, break up with her, and then leave her in the woods. Yes, boyfriend of the year. So she's really sad. Most of this movie she's depressed. Is that why I like it? Maybe. I just love when a girl is sad. Like, I'm a sad girl. I like watching sad girl movies. But anyway, this is mostly her being depressed. She kind of gets back, but she starts hanging out with Jacob Black and his reservation. They're vibing, they're chilling, they're having fun. She's starting to like herself again and like seeing people and being out. And then there's a miscommunication over the phone, and Edward thinks that Bella's dead. So he decides, I'm gonna commit murder on myself, basically. I don't know what I can say on YouTube. Not a lot, for real. But he decides, I'm gonna, end it all because Bella's dead. Well, Bella's not dead. So the movie ends with Bella rushing, saving his life. Yay. Eclipse. This one's really heavy on the love triangle between Bella, Jacob, and Edward. Super heavy. This one's like the big battle between the newborn vampire army and the vampires, because the girlfriend of James, which they killed in the first movie, wants revenge. So she gets with a boy, makes him a vampire, and has him create a newborn army to kill all the Cullens. This is where werewolves and the Cullens have to get together, and they have to fight to save Bella and also save the Cullens, because everybody's kind of hating. But it's pretty good. Bella ends up choosing Edward at the end of this movie, so there's no more back and forth. It's like, no, we're together. Bella has decided it is Edward also. This is when Edward has the most hideous sideburns in the entire series. Disgusting. I don't know whose idea that was. Bad idea. Breaking Down Part 1. This is the marriage and honeymoon unexpected pregnancy movie. It's cute. I don't love it. I did watch this one in theaters, but it freaks me out because the pregnancy freaks me out. She's deathly skinny. There's this vivid scene I remember. When I rewatch the movies, I don't rewatch the last two. I just don't think they're as good. But the Breaking Down Part 1, there's this scene where she's pregnant and like super frail, and she's holding this styrofoam cup of blood, and she like almost drops it. And when she reaches to catch it, her back just like snaps in half, and she's like, and she literally like falls to the floor. Dude. Traumatizing. And then she goes into labor. Basically, this movie ends with her dying, but then her eyes pop open because she's not dead. She's a vampire. Which brings us to the last movie, Breaking Dawn Part 2. The baby from the previous movie begins to grow at a rapid rate, very just growing like crazy. And you're like, oh, okay. Her name's Renesmee, by the way, and she's part CGI. This is all about the fact that she's an immortal child and people think she was bitten, which is like a thing you're not supposed to do. And they can like murder the whole bloodline if you do that because it's a really big no-no. So this whole movie is them basically trying to prove to the Volturi, which is like the council or like I guess the government of vampires, that Renesmee was born, okay, between a human and a vampire. She wasn't bitten, she was born. So she's not immortal, even though she kind of is, but she's not in the way that they think she is. Anyway, this movie ends up with a huge fight scene. There's a big twist. I won't spoil it for you, even though it's been out for a while. But the vampires in this movie, in my opinion, are stupid. I hate how the sun just makes them sparkle. Why don't they burn? I don't understand that. In every other movie they burn. Why are they sparkling? It's stupid. There's no harmful aspect to it, which I don't like. I think it's cool that they don't sleep. I'm not a fan of the skin in this movie for the vampires being like porcelain where it like cracks and shatters when they get into fights, or if they get hurt or get bitten, it's like glass breaking. I don't like that. It like makes them look weaker and like less cool in my opinion. Other than that, some of the vampires here and there you get to see more in Breaking Dawn Part 2 when they start to like gather an army, but some of them have powers. Like Edward, he can hear people's thoughts. Alice can see the future, and then Renesmee, their little CGI baby, can like show people slideshows if she touches you. So that's kind of cool. Overall fan rating of the Twilight movies. Vampires, stupid. Number 1 hottie, Edward. I'm team Edward all the way, not including his ugly time in Eclipse. Best couple, Jasper and Alice. Hands down, there's literally no like comparison. Best character, Charlie Swan. Worst character, Jacob, especially in the books. Whining and annoying in the books and in the movie. Just so annoying. So annoying. Overall fan rating, 2 out of 5. Don't get me wrong, I love this series, but if we're really focusing on vampires, like just the vampire powers and the vampire aspect of it, it's lacking. Then we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love this show, okay? Oh my god, I love this show. I was obsessed with this show for a couple months, still am. But I'm kind of been obsessed with another one recently I just finished today. But Buffy the Vampire Slayer takes place in Southern California in a town called Sunnydale. We get a few episodes in LA because that's where Buffy's character is from, but it's mostly in like some vague small town in Southern California. Buffy Summers is a teenage girl who is also the Slayer, which is one of the only people in the world with the gift to kill like demons, vampires, anything evil that comes. And her powers are strength, like reflex skills, fighting skills. The show follows her from like 16 to late 20s-ish, and her group of friends that also fight evil with her. They refer to them as the Scooby Gang. It was made in the 90s. The first season aired in 97 and the show ended in 2003. I was born in 2001, so I watched this show this past year for the first time ever, and I literally love it. So we have the Slayer, and then we have the Slayer's Watcher, which is like the person she goes to for everything. It's like the Wikipedia. His name's Giles, okay? If she's fighting a demon and she doesn't know what it's called, she can ask Giles. He looks it up in the book. He tells her, they figure out how to fight it. That's basically the whole show. Buffy's best friend Willow, she gets into witchcraft. She also ends up being the witch character and also like the token gay lesbian insert later on when it's 2000s and the world starts being a little more okay with gay people. Does lose points for only having one gay character, even for being late 90s, early 2000s, but Tara is a lesbian, and then Willow, they make Willow gay later, but it's weird because she's like very heterosexual for the first like 3 seasons. I'm pretty sure it's 3 seasons, and then all of a sudden she's gay and she's never liked men. So it's like, because at this time in the world, people are scared of bisexual people, they don't exist, so it's you're either gay or straight. So I didn't really like what they did with her storyline there. I think it would have been much cooler if she stayed as like a bisexual character, but it's fine. So the werewolves in this show were by far the ugliest werewolves ever. Basically a gorilla, imagine a gorilla, I'll show you a picture, but a gorilla costume, but werewolf. That's literally what it was. The quality of the show is not amazing, but again, it's the 90s, so it's good. It's got a good nostalgic factor. The fashions is late 90s, early 2000s, so it definitely gets a lot of points there because I love that era of fashion. And it's right before everything starts going downhill for fashion, so I like that part of it. The show starts in high school, follows them to college eventually after college, but something happens and I won't spoil, but it's huge, okay? And then Buffy basically doesn't finish college. But after the college era, the show just kind of starts to fizzle out, in my opinion, which I did some research and I actually found out it's because the woman who plays Buffy was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so they told the writers to kind of like write the ending because she was like, I need to go do other things, which valid because that show went on a little too long in my opinion. But anyway, season 1, Buffy moves to Sunnydale, starts her new school, starts to fight supernatural beings. This is all about like battling the Master, which is like the enemy of this season. He's very sassy, okay? He's very sassy. But he is trying to open the Hellmouth, which is like this crazy thing that is underneath the school, the high school she goes to in Sunnydale. Sorry, my legs are falling asleep. Anyway, season 2, new vampires show up in town. Drusilla and Spike, my favorite vampires, hands down. And then also Angel. This is when she starts to get romantic with Angel. He's the only vampire with a soul, so he's like the good vampire. But in my opinion, he's actually the most evil because without his soul, the stuff he did to Drusilla, like that is evil. Everybody suspects the evil one, but he's not, and I think that's like the whole point. But anyway, he loses his soul in this season. He starts doing some crazy jaw-dropping stuff. I won't spoil. Main characters die. Buffy's heart gets broken. Blah, blah, blah. Ends with her leaving. Season 3 starts really slow because Buffy's somewhere else and she has to like come back. Then we meet Faith. I hate Faith. If you're a Faith lover, why? Like, explain to me why in the comments, because I don't understand why people like Faith. I think she's annoying, but she's the other Slayer because when a Slayer dies, a new Slayer rises. So Buffy died for a few minutes. She drowned. And then another Slayer popped out of nowhere, and that was Faith. I hate Faith so much. Anyways, there's 2 Slayers. This is the Mayor season, so the Mayor is evil. The Mayor's gonna do something evil, the Ascension, and it's gonna happen on graduation day. Something big happens. It's a good transition into the next season when they're in college. So for season 4, Angel leaves the show and starts his spin-off show, Angel. So he's not in the show anymore. He shows up a few times here and there, but he's mostly off doing his spin-off show. And then she ends up dating a guy she meets in college, so we have the next love interest, which is Riley. He's part of like a secret initiative that the government runs underneath the college, again with things being underneath the college, but underneath the school Buffy goes to. But there's an initiative and they capture evil things and they test them and things like that. She ends up being with him. The enemy for this season is Adam. He's a human demon cybernetic hybrid created by the Initiative, who Buffy ends up ultimately defeating because of course. But it's not my favorite enemy she has to fight this season, but we get a lot of Spike screen time, which I can't complain because I love him. Season 5 is when Buffy discovers that she has a younger sister, Dawn, which is just like this weird, the way they do it when you're watching the show, the next episode, it's like they just pretend like she's always had a sister and you're like, what? She didn't have a sister though. I just got done watching 4 seasons and she didn't have a sister. So who is this hoe? That's literally what you're thinking. Then they explain that technically Dawn didn't exist and she was sent to Buffy for protection as her sister because she's the key. It's a whole thing. I don't love it, but whatever. At the end of season 5, something happens. Crazy boots. I won't spoil that because it's pretty big, but season 6, Willow ends up getting into dark magic. That's this season. She's kind of like an addict, but with magic. So that's pretty much what goes on there. Season 7 is arguably the worst season ever. I hate this season. All the potential Slayers are flown to Sunnydale to fight the ultimate evil, which is like the first, okay? It's an ancient force. It's like wiping out the whole Slayer bloodline, which, whatever. But I think it's so stupid. And all of the stupid, I hate this season so much. I hate how they ended the show. I hate it. I hate all of the potential Slayers. Like, whatever. F off, okay? I hate it. I hate it. There is, then there's the spinoff Angel, which it kind of also continues after Buffy. So if you finish Buffy and you're like, damn, I kind of want to see what keeps going on, go over to Angel because it goes on further. I haven't watched it because everybody I don't like that leaves Buffy goes to that damn show. So why would I go watch it? Like, Cordelia's over there. Faith is over there. I don't like either of those people. So like, why would I go watch? And I don't really love Angel. So I haven't watched it yet. Overall rank, vampire powers are mid, okay? They burn up in the daylight. There is no way around it. There's no magic ring. There's no way around it other than the giant blanket to cover them from the sun, which is like what Spike uses 24/7. I will note that towards the the later seasons, they kind of just give up on the whole like avoiding the sun thing, and Spike ends up like outside in the daytime. He's just standing in a shadow. I'm like, girl, Why were we not doing this for a majority of the show? And now we're just doing it? I hated that. I hated him just being like in the shadows. Before, he would literally be like in a crypt or something. So that was dumb. Also, all the changes when they're in human form to vampire form are very weird, okay? They're ugly. The prosthetic is so thick, and you can just tell it's like, it's so thick that the actors can't close their mouth. And I get it. It's like the early 90s, but come on. Early 2000s, Vampire Diaries was doing it. Why couldn't you? But it was just like, they're just ugly. It's like molded on top of their face, and then their mouth prosthetics are so big that they all just like mouth breathe, and they're like I don't know how to explain it. I'll try and show pictures, but I just hate that. Number one hotties, obviously Spike. Best, what do we have? Best couple, Tara and Willow, because yes, gay, I love them. I also love Tara. Best character, Tara. Worst character, Xander. He's a cheater. He's annoying. Overall Fang rating, 4 out of 5, because I love this show. Okay, then we get to True Blood, which I finished True Blood today. Literally today, I finished it this morning before I filmed this. I love it. It is based on the Southern Vampire Mysteries, which is a series of novels. The show revolves around Sookie Stackhouse, a telepathic waitress living in the fictional rural town Bontemps in Louisiana. This show gets extra points for the setting because I love a show and a movie in Louisiana. I can't explain why, I just do. Anytime there are gators or like the accents, I just love it so much. I love it. I love the humidity, the mosquitoes not being there, but like I love watching TV and movies that are there. I love it. What I love the most about this show that sets it apart from all the other ones is a couple things, but one being it's set 2 years after the invention of synthetic blood called True Blood that's allowed vampires to come out of the coffin. So everybody knows about vampires. It's not this like hush hush thing like, oh, what are you? Your skin is so cold. Like, no, everybody knows them. It's like treated as another race. Like when someone says, instead of saying I'm a vampire, they say I'm a vampire. Like you would say I'm white, okay? Like I'm vampire. It's like a race, and I love that. I love that. The show premiered in 2008, finished in 2014, so I was 7, and then I was 13 when it finished. I just watched it this year. So there are 7 seasons, arguably the worst fashion years, my preteen years, early teen years, worst fashion. So if you're gonna, don't watch it for that because it's terrible. Sookie falls in love with, or Sookie, I keep saying Sookie, it's Sookie. Sookie falls in love with 174-year-old Bill Compton. He's Vampire Bill, okay? He's supposed to be the good guy, and then our bad guy love interest is Eric Northman. Hi, Eric Northman. I'll see you in my dreams. I love him so much. He's played by Alexander Skarsgård, which, yes, you heard me correctly. That is Bill Skarsgård's brother, okay? The guy who plays It, the clown. The guy in Barbarians. The guy in a lot of things. The guy who just did the new Crow movie. I think he's also in Nosferatu, okay? His brother. Equally as tall. Oh my god. He's not as freaky looking, but he is so tall. So tall. It's so awesome. So, fun fact, I was watching this, and when Eric Northman took his shirt off, and he was standing there super tall, half naked, I was like, oh, I know you're related to Bill Skarsgård. I just know it. Like, I immediately looked it up and I was correct. I was like, yes, because you guys have the same build. Like, he's a little more built, but it's genetics, you know? I just knew. What I love, another thing I love about the show is that everybody's aged up. No one is 16 in high school. We are 25 and up. We're adults. We're living in the real world. We aren't teenagers. So I love that. I love that everybody's adults. I think if I'd watched it as a teenager, I wouldn't love that part of it as much because I was a teenager, but as an adult, I love that they're all adults. Anyway, the other element to the show is that Sookie isn't human. Like, she is human, but she's not. She's telepathic, which you end up finding out is because she's a fairy halfling, which is not that big of a spoiler because you don't know what that means, so I'll just say it, and you find out pretty soon into the show. But she's a halfling, so she's half fairy, so she can read people's minds, except for vampires. I love that she's not human. I feel like in Vampire Diaries and really, and Twilight, like, it's always like the human, delicate human, but she's not. She has her own power, so I love that. Not only are there vampires and fairies, but there are also shifters, werewolves, and werepanthers. A brief moment in time, but very weird. There's also a season with witches. And there's some like other stuff. There's like a medium, a bunch of things. But that's kind of like the gist. The shifters can shift into anything. Any animal, They have to have a blueprint though. So like if you said shift into a horse, they would have to like have a horse to like copy. They can't just like drum up something. So if they're going to be a dog, they have to like one of them is a shifter and he'll shift into like the stray dog that's always around. You know what I mean? So they need a thing. Also, they can shift into other people, but only if they've already killed someone. It's like a skinwalker thing. So if they've killed someone, they've murdered someone, they can shift into a person, but it almost always kills them. So, anywho, the way that the vampire society works is there's like a hierarchy / government for the vampire society, which Vampire Diaries doesn't have this, if I remember correctly, but Twilight kind of has the Volturi, which is like the little council, but this is kind of cool. So True Blood has a king, queen for states, and then the sheriffs for portions of that state. So like under the kings and the queens, there's the sheriffs, and then there's the authority, which is like the feds of our world, and then there's also there is like a magister, I think in like the first season, who is like the judge or whatever. I love this show because everybody's aged up. They really play into like the sex and sexuality of it all. But I love that there's a lot of gay, lesbian, bisexuals. There's polyamory. There's literally anything you could think of. It's in this show, which I love that. And I think because everybody's above the age of like 20 something, they can play around with that more. It is rated TVMA, which is a lot different than the other stuff I watch. That's like TV 14 or like PG 13, so keep that in mind. But yeah, so there are 7 seasons. Did I say? Yeah, 7 seasons. First season is like a murder mystery vibe, so there's a string of killings. All signs are pointing to Sookie's brother, Jason. It's not him, obviously. They end up finding out who it is. I'm not going to spoil that one for you because I could not guess it, so I was shocked. But Sookie's also falling in love with Bill in this season. Season 2, Sookie learns about her powers in this season. There's the Maynard named Marion, which takes over Bon Tom's. They end up having to kill her. I don't really like the Maynard season. It's not my favorite. Season 3, the main thing in this season is the Vampire King of Mississippi. Yeah, Russell Edgington. He's gay. Vampire King of Mississippi. Like, what else do you need to know? He is so evil, though. He's really, really old, so he's really, really powerful. And he, like, kidnaps Bill. So most of the season is, like, Sookie trying to get Bill back, which, whatever. But I don't know. But because Bill isn't around this season, I think we end up getting more of her and Eric, which I like, personally. Season 4 is the season of the witches. This is also the season where Eric temporarily loses his memory. Arguably the best part of, like, this entire show is when Eric loses his memory and he goes to Sookie for help. And there's just these really cute, like, scenes of them, and he's being really sweet because he doesn't know anything or remember anything he's ever done to her. And when he does get his memories back, he, like, feels so guilty and he starts being nice to her. So that's kind of nice. This is also when Sookie, I guess this happens in 4 too, but Sookie returns to Bon Tomp after a year, or maybe this is season 5. I don't know, but she ends up going away for like a year because she gets stuck in like a fairy world. And when she comes back, she realizes everyone in her family, her boyfriend, her brother, everybody moved on, like she was dead. It was literally 1 year, y'all. 1 year, okay? Guess who didn't move on? My lipstick is gone by now, but guess who didn't move on? Eric. I almost said Bill. Her boyfriend, Bill, moved on. Eric bought her house, like, never stopped looking. He knew she was alive. Love that man. Season 5 sucks. Tara ends up being a vampire. There's like the whole Lilith vampire religion thing. I did not like this season. If you're a True Blood fan and you liked this season, can you tell me why in the comments? Because I'm not getting it. Season 6, government cracks down on vampires, creates Hep V, which is like AIDS, but for vampires, there's no cure, kills them. Warlow is also in this episode, the fairy vampire guy. You think he's sexy and hot and fun, but he's actually evil. Also, they kill one of my favorite characters in this season, and I will never forgive them for it. Season 7. This season was so intense. Like, I feel like I stopped breathing like 100 times watching this season. I also cried the most in this season, and it has the biggest fight scenes and the most intense, like, really good fight scenes, honestly. I think it was a really, really good season. I cried so much, okay? But part of it is, like, the Hep V vampires are crazy. It's kind of giving, like, post-apocalyptic in Bon Tomps because no one's really like paying attention to the smaller towns. They're really just trying to protect the people in the cities. So it's kind of like every man for himself. It's kind of cool. So for the vampires in this show, I actually love the vampires in the show, except for the fangs. They're so cheesy. They're literally like, I'll give you an actual replay of what it's like for them to have their fangs out, okay? See, it's like that. Party City Fangs, okay? It's really bad. But there's a lot of cool factors about the vampires in this show too. Silver weakens them, which I thought was such a cool little aspect. It can literally be like the thinnest strand of silver, and if you lay it over their neck and their wrists, they're like stuck to the floor. So that's cool. Blood sharing has effects. Like in Vampire Diaries, when they gave blood to someone to heal them, it would just heal them. But in this show, it heals them, and then you have like a connection with that person. So the human will start dreaming about them. They'll start liking them. The vampire can sense when they're in fear, have like kind of like a GPS location on them. When they're in fear, they know where to find them. So that's kind of cool. And then it gets humans high if they take a lot of it. It also gives them just like heightened senses, things like that. So it's pretty cool. They can also glamour people, which is like Vampire Diary compulsion, but same thing. They also cry blood and their snot is blood. So like that's kind of cool. I feel like it makes more sense for vampires to cry blood than to cry tears, because technically their bodies aren't functioning like a normal human. So why would there be tears and snot? It would be blood in my mind. That just makes more sense. But they can't go in the sun, they burn up, and there isn't really a way around it except for drinking fairy blood, which is like not readily available for everybody. So there aren't people walking around with like daylight rings, but there is like light locked rooms that they sleep in, which is pretty cool. And if they don't rest during the daytime, they get the bleeds, which is like bleeding from their ears and their nose and their eyes. If like they get weak, like it's bad, like they have to rest. Complete opposite of Twilight. They have to sleep. It's kind of cool. And when they die, they explode. Like guts everywhere explode, which reminds me of a movie that's I'm gonna talk about in this video, Abigail. They also explode in that one. But there's a link to the vampires and those that they sire. So like if I was a vampire and I bet someone made someone a vampire, they're sired to me. So like I'm their maker. So we have like a bond. So I can command them to do things, and they always have a connection to me. I can summon them and they have to come. That's kind of cool. Another thing I really liked about the show is that you can rescind your invitation. So like in Vampire Diaries, you have to be invited into the house, which this show you have to be invited into. But if you don't want someone to have access to your house anymore, you just go, I rescind my invitation, and a force just like pulls them out and dumps them on your porch. Where in Vampire Diaries, you just gotta either give the deed of the house to someone else or move. So that kind of sucks, but I love that you can do that in this one. And then a little fun fact for you about the show is the actors who play Sookie and Vampire Bill actually are married and happily married and like have a little family now, like as we speak. They got together around season 3. They got married in season 3 of the show. So like, but you could really see it in the last couple seasons. They just look in love. Like when he looks at her, you're like, oh, they're in love, which they're kind of supposed to be. He's supposed to be in love with her, like no matter what. They just like have this look of love in their eyes that they can't really get rid of, and that's because they love each other in real life. But I love when that happens, when people meet on a show. All right, let's do the overall rating of True Blood. So, vampires, 9 out of 10. I think I'm gonna take a point off solely because of the fangs. I think they're so silly. Number 1 hottie, Eric, but not season 1 Eric with the long hair. We're talking about every other. Once he gets his fancy dancy haircut, he's number 1 hottie. Best couple, Eric and Sookie, even though technically they were never really a couple. But when Eric loses his memory, they're just really cute. So I'm rooting for them. They were endgame, okay? Best character, it's a tie between Terry, Lafayette, and Ginger, okay? I love Ginger. Originally, I was just going to say Terry. And then I was like, actually, I really love Lafayette. So I would say Terry and Lafayette. And then I had to add Ginger because every time Ginger is on the screen, I'm having a laugh. I'm giggling. I'm like, I love her. She's just effortlessly funny. I love her. I also love that in the last season, we get more of like a flashback history of like Ginger's past and like where Ginger came from and how she kind of came about being with everybody. So I love that. Worst character, Bill. I hate him. He's a liar. He's a manipulative liar. I hate him. He does not give a shit about Sookie, even though he says he does. I hate him. I don't care. Don't care. Overall Fang rating, 5 out of 5. I love this show. Am I biased because I just finished watching it like an hour ago? Maybe. I don't care. I love this show. The next one we have is a movie. We're getting into the movies. 30 Days of Night. Okay. Came out in 2007. It's categorized as a vampire horror film based on a comic book miniseries. This one takes place in Alaska. The idea of this movie is it's Alaska, a small town. There's an annual 30 days where there's no sun. So everybody kind of like gets out of town for those 30 days to avoid the fact that there's no sun. but there is a small portion of people who stay. Weird, scary things start happening, and about like 150 people end up staying for the month, but a group of vampires show up and just start hell, okay? But listen, there's so much snow in this movie. It's like 95% snow. I love that. It also genuinely scared me. The vampires in this movie were terrifying. The amount of snow is terrifying. It freaks me out. I can't drive in it. I don't live where there's snow. So when there's a bunch of snow, I'm like, how are they functioning? I couldn't imagine fighting vampires in snow. Everybody looks so cold in that movie. It was really scary. Out of all the things I watched in this video recap like ranking thing, this one scared me, and that's hard to do. I'm hard to scare. That one was scary. The vampires tear their necks like they like, girl, they literally like shred, like their whole body shake back or not their whole bodies, but their heads, they like shake back and forth, and their teeth are just so, oh my god, no. These vampires don't need permission to enter a home, so they literally just barge through windows, doors. There's no safe space. There's no like, you know when you're playing tag with your sibling and you're like, I'm safe, I'm on the couch. There's no such thing. You're not safe. That's also what's scary about these. They just snatch people and drag them under the houses and eat them. They also have really sharp teeth, a bunch of sharp teeth, and they all speak their own language, girl. They all speak their own language, so they're like, literally like, a lot of it doesn't sound like anything, and some of them they're just like screeching at each other. I can't. No. I need to know what they're saying. Like that, every part of this movie freaks me out. They have really long fingernails. Speaking of, I was gonna have long fingernails, but the press-ons I bought came with glue that I'm allergic to, so I couldn't put them on. So the struggles of being allergic to a lot of things. It actually reminds me of I Am Legend. Those like zombie things, I don't know if those are zombies or vampires, but it reminds me of them because they group up and they have their own little like screeching at each other language. A good chunk of this movie was whispering because they were hiding the whole time. So if you're like me and you cannot stand whisper acting, like watching a movie where everybody's just talking like this and they're whispering and they're trying to be really quiet, like I can't do it. I literally can't do it. That made me want to pull my teeth out a bit, one by one. They do have a weakness, sunlight, obviously, since this whole movie is the 30 days that there is no sunlight, but their skin gets all like black and charred, like if you leave a marshmallow on a campfire for a little too long, that's exactly what it looks like. And yeah, and getting their head chopped off with an axe seems to kill them. The overall ranking I have, so vampire powers, absolutely terrifying. I don't want to fight these ones. These ones are scary. Number 1 hottie, Eben, which is like such a stupid name, but he's the main guy. He was hot. Every time he came on screen, I was like, oh, it was like that TikTok where it's like, la 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 la, you know, like they're not listening. That was me. Best couple doesn't apply. Best character, the Sons of Anarchy guy, loved him. Worst character, the guy that shot his entire family and then didn't shoot himself, and then caused a vampire to follow him to everybody's hideout spot, causing more people to die. So I didn't like that guy. Overall Fang rating, 2 out of 5. It was scary, kind of slow. I'll probably never watch it again, and I really could not stand the whispering, and the way it was filmed kind of made me nauseous. I had to look away a couple times, so I didn't really love it. Next movie we have is Abigail. This one's a new one. It came out in 2024. It's classified as horror comedy vampire film, which I would agree with that. I saw this in theaters when it came out, actually, and I freaking loved it. I watched it again to refresh for this video. It grossed $42.4 million on a $28 million budget. Crazy boots. Crazy. This movie follows a young ballet dancer named Abigail who was abducted by 6 criminals and taken to the secluded Willem Manor. It's a gorgeous Victorian mansion, so if you're like me and you're hoping one day you'll live in a Victorian house, you're gonna love this movie because it's gorge. But after they abduct her, they take her to the manor, and the leader is like, you guys have to stay here for 24 hours, and after that, you'll each get a portion of the $50 million, okay? That's a lot of money. All the criminals, so they have to survive 24 hours. All the criminals go by fake names so that they don't end up ratting on each other. So there is the NYPD detective Frank. There's recovering drug addict Joey. There's thrill-seeking hacker Sammy. Former Marine sniper Rickles. And the big dumb muscle Peter. And then the sociopathic driver Dean, which is played by Angus Cloud, who passed away. So they actually dedicated the end of this movie, like they had his little signature. It was very cute, but they're all kind of just passing the time, playing drinking games, and then something crazy happens. Okay, things get scary. Dean's head gets cut off by something. They think it's Abigail's father, the little girl they're watching, like the father. He's like a mob boss. or mafia boss. I could be wrong. I don't really know the difference. Anyway, they think it's the father, but they find out it's actually Abigail. She's a vampire. And the whole thing, Lambert, the guy who was helping them put the kidnapping together and told them they just had to hang out for 24 hours and they would get their money, he is actually working for Abigail. He's also a vampire. And every time there are people who are like, all the criminals wronged her father in some way, shape, or form. So Lambert collected them under this idea that they were kidnapping and gonna get a ransom. And it was actually just so that Abigail could clean up her father's rats, basically. So she plays with them and like lets them run around the house and she chases them down. It's a really entertaining movie. I love this. The vampires in this show, they also explode when they die, which I love that. It's so awesome. They explode. They're really fun. They can like turn other vampires into their puppets. It's a really fun time. I love this movie. So overall rating, vampires in this movie are awesome. Best character is Peter. I think he's silly, goofy, super fun. Worst character is Frank. I hate him. He's so annoying. Overall Fang rating, 5 out of 5 fangs. Next movie is Daybreakers. I just watched this one. Came out in 2009. My foot's asleep. My foot's asleep. It is categorized as an American-Australian sci-fi action horror film. American-Australian sci-fi action horror vampire film. That is a mouthful. The film takes place in a futuristic world overrun by vampires and centers around Vampiric Corporation, which sets out to capture all and farm the blood off all the remaining humans. Ethan Hawke is a vampire in this movie. He works at a corporation trying to come up with like synthetic blood. If you think of True Blood I just told you about, he's trying to do that, but his work gets interrupted by a group of humans he ends up bumping into, and he finds out amongst these humans there was a former vampire who actually cured himself. So he ends up working with him to find a cure for being a vampire, and they end up curing the vampires in the town, the city, or whatever, and yay, day is over, saved. The CGI in this movie is so bad. For being 2009, is that what I said? It's so bad. Also, the vampires have no reflection, which is kind of funny. They also have really cool light-locked cars, which I say light-locked because that's what they say in True Blood, but it's basically like they can drive around in the daylight because there's like webcams on the car, which is pretty cool. When vampires don't feed, or they feed on themselves or other vampires, they deteriorate into these like nasty-looking goblin bat creatures, which I thought was really cool. And Ethan Hawke is basically essentially like a vegan kind of vampire. He doesn't want to feed on humans. So his ears start to like get pointy. It's kind of cool. There is a blue light filter over this whole movie that's kind of like the first Twilight movie. And the main vampire character's name is Edward, and he's supposed to be the good vampire. So what does that remind you of? Because it's reminding me a lot of Twilight. Does this movie make sense? No. Did I enjoy seeing Ethan Hawke covered in blood? Yes. So the overall ranking, vampires, boring and dumb in this movie. Number 1 hottie, Ethan Hawke. Best character was the Green Goblin guy. I don't know his name in the movie, but when I saw him, I was like, Green Goblin, what are you doing here? So, best character. Overall Fang rating, 2 out of 5. I think because I'm so used to True Blood, this show just didn't hit because I'm like, I've seen True Blood do it better. A good watch, nonetheless. Last movie we have for this video, Fright Night. Okay, I'd never seen Fright Night before. When I was telling my mom I was doing this video, she was like, you have to include Fright Night in that wrap up. You have to. So I watched it. It's a supernatural horror film that came out in 2011. I was 10 years old. Definitely a comedy, okay? Charlie is a teenager living in the suburbs of Las Vegas who discovers that his neighbor is a vampire. Jerry is the vampire's name. Charlie bands up with his girlfriend and this like Las Vegas performer vampire guy to take on Jerry and his band of vampires. So it's definitely 2010s horror flick. Everybody's in low-rise jeans. There's that like joke where the skinny girl eats a lot, even though no matter how much she eats, she's just so skinny. Like they make those jokes. Very 2010s. You know the vibe. I was laughing my ass off, okay? It was a very fun vibe. Just really fun. I also love the casting of this movie. So many people that I love in so many other media movies and shows that I was like, hey, what is she doing here? Oh, and that one too. Like, so many. To name a few, I wrote down the mom from Little Miss Sunshine, the mom from Diary of a Wimpy Kid, the older sister from 28 Weeks Later, and the kid in Pitch Perfect, and the guy in Odd Thomas. So like a bunch of movies I like. Those people were also in this movie. The vampires have ugly fingernails, and they have like blue veiny necks, and the vampires don't show up on camera or have reflections, which is kind of cool. They turn into a vampire by just like biting them. Like, you can just bite someone and they turn it. It's not very complicated. Like, all the other shows and movies, it's very complicated. In this one, you bite someone, boom. It's pretty simple and boring, if I'm being honest. They burn up in the sun into ash. The silver doesn't affect them, but holy water does. And the ugliest vampire, in my opinion. Like, so ugly. I'll show a picture, but like, oh my god. I thought the Buffy vampires were ugly. That is an ugly vampire. Ugly. Like, I don't want to be with that. I actually want to, like, okay, we're going too far. When they get staked, they catch on fire, and then like they like slowly turn into ash. Definitely a cool way to die, but I still think the exploding ones are way more fun. Overall ranking of this one, vampire powers. Vampires overall, ugly, okay, ugly. Number 1 hottie, Peter Vincent. He's the Vegas show guy in this movie. What can I say? All right, I love a long leather trench coat. It does it for me, it really does. Best character is Peter's friend Ed. Every time he was on the screen, I was laughing my butt off. Worst character, Dave Franco. Why does he need to be in a movie? I hate him. Overall ranking, 3 out of 5, okay? This movie made me laugh. It was an overall, a good 2000s vibe, a good 2000s movie. My camera's about to die, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this video off. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you had fun. Comment down below if you've seen any of these or if you have a recommendation for me. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!